I recently made a video on cerebral palsy, and in that video, I said that genetic factor is one of the factors that predisposes a child to developing cerebral palsy. Okay, and someone came to my comment section and said that she's skeptical about the fact that genetic factor contributes to a child having cerebral palsy, that I have to shed more light on that. And sweetheart, that is why I am here. I am here to shed more light on the fact that genetic factor is one of the factors that can predispose children to cerebral palsy. Now, we already know that cerebral palsy is a neurological disorder that affects the muscle tone of a child, movement, and the balance of a child. All right. Now, cerebral palsy is primarily caused by damage to the developing brain of a child or the abnormal development of the brain cell of a child. All right. And this can happen while the child is in the uterus, during the birth of the child, or shortly after the child is born. All right. While environmental and medical factors are the common types or common factors that predisposes children to cerebral palsy, genetic factor also play a significant role. Now, there's what we call genetic mutation. Some cerebral palsies actually occur because of mutation in genes that are responsible for brain growth and structure. Now, this mutation can cause abnormal brain wiring, defective neuron connection, and poor formation of white matter, which helps in brain communication. As a result of this, the child is not able to control muscles and movements, which leads to the symptoms of those similar to a cerebral palsy caused by injury related causes. Sometimes a child can inherit genetic variants that make the brain of that child very vulnerable to injury. Now, this doesn't mean that the gene directly causes cerebral palsy, but it increases susceptibility to other risk factors like oxygen deprivation and premature birth. Now, for instance, gene that affect how the body handles inflammation, how the body handles blood clotting, or even oxygen transport, right, can increase the risk of brain damage under stress. Now, in simple terms, two babies can be experiencing the same birth complication, all right, but the one with genetic vulnerability is more likely to develop cerebral palsy. I hope you understand how this gene factor is working when it comes to cerebral palsy. It is not as if it exposes it causes the cerebral palsy itself, but it will increase the susceptibility of that child, okay, being vulnerable, such that when that child that has that genetic vulnerability is experiencing a birth complication, that particular child is more likely to end up having cerebral palsy than the other child that does not have any genetic vulnerability. Now, family history also has a role to play here. Okay, in some cases, cerebral palsy run in families, and that is suggesting a hereditary link. Some genetic syndrome that affects the brain or muscles, like the Leach-Nyhan syndrome, the mitochondrial disorder, or the chromosomal abnormalities, can mimic or lead to cerebral palsy. Thus, a child born into a family with certain genetic conditions may have a higher chance of developing cerebral palsy-like symptoms. Now, it is also important to note that genetic causes of cerebral palsy is not always dominant. Research has shown that just 10 to 30% of cerebral palsy cases have a strong genetic basis. Sometimes genetic factors and environmental factors they interact. All right, a genetic weakness plus a stressful event like premature birth, like infection or injury during childbirth, together can lead to cerebral palsy. The good news is that medicine has developed, and there are some tests that doctors can use to identify if a cerebral palsy is caused by genetic factor. Tests like whole exome sequencing can be used by doctors to ascertain if the cause of a particular cerebral palsy is caused by genetic factor, all right, rather than external injuries. So, because medicine is fast advancing, all right, doctors can easily detect that this cerebral palsy is actually caused by genetic factor because of this test that is now available to screen. This whole of exome sequencing test, it helps to provide accurate diagnosis of what the cause of that cerebral palsy actually is. It helps to guide treatment plans, and it also helps to counsel the parents of such children in case of subsequent pregnancies. You can see that we have genetic mutation, we have family history, inherited variants, and we also have the genetic and environmental interaction. All this form the genetic factor, okay, that predisposes a child to having cerebral palsy. So when we say that genetic factor also contributes to whether or not a child will have cerebral palsy, we don't mean that the genetic factor is what causes cerebral palsy. What it means that there are some family history, there are some inherited variants that a child will inherit, okay? There are some genetic mutations that a child will have going on in the brain cells that will predispose the child, okay, or make the child more vulnerable. Okay, now, should in case that child have such genetic mutation, such family history, such inherited variants, plus an environmental interaction, meaning that at the point of giving birth to the child, something went wrong. Okay, the child had a brain injury, all right, or the child had a fall, there was shaking baby syndrome. If all these environmental interactions occur and the child already have one of these genetic factors, the child has this inherited variants, or the child has this genetic mutation, or there is a family history of such, it only increases the risk, okay, of that child having cerebral palsy. I hope you now understand what I meant when I said that genetic factor contributes to a child developing cerebral palsy. Please do well to share this video. Share this video to every mother, to every potential mother, to every woman in your contact. You just might save a life. Until I see you again in my next one, please stay healthy, stay informed, and please share this video.